They called it the boldest gamble of the war. A plan so daring it could end the fighting by Christmas of 1944. But as British tanks and American paratroopers fought through the narrow streets of a Dutch town called Nijmegen, they would discover that victory was never promised, and courage would be the only bridge left standing. This is the story of the men who faced impossible odds. In one of World War II's most desperate battles, the bridges at Nijmegen. It was September 19, 1944. The air above Holland still carried the roar of aircraft and the rattle of parachutes. Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne assault in history, was underway. 3 Allied airborne divisions had dropped deep behind enemy lines, tasked with capturing a series of bridges that would open the road to Germany. If they succeeded, the war could end in months. If they failed, it would be remembered as one of the greatest tragedies of the war. Among them was the U.S. 82nd Airborne Division, led by Brigadier General James Gavin, only 37 years old, already a legend among his men. Their mission: seize the bridges at the Dutch town of Nijmegen and hold them until the British armor of XXX Corps arrived. But nothing about this plan would go as expected. Lieutenant Colonel Ben van der Voort, commanding the 2nd Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry, led his men into Nijmegen that morning. They were tough, battle-hardened paratroopers who had jumped into Sicily, Italy, and Normandy. But as they fought through the narrow Dutch streets, even they were stunned by what awaited them. Van der Voort watched from a shattered rooftop as his men advanced block by block. British tanks from the Guards' Armored Division raced through the alleys beside them, their engines growling, cannons flashing. Nijmegen wasn't neat and tidy, Van der Voort would later recall. It was chaos, a labyrinth of brick walls, gardens, and houses. You fired fast and straight, or you were dead. Inside those cramped streets, war became personal. Men fought at point-blank range, room to room, yard to yard. Germans appeared from hidden cellars and attics. Machine guns barked from behind shattered walls. Smoke hung low, the air thick with dust and cordite. The paratroopers pressed forward. Their mission was simple: reach the bridges, no matter the cost. Operation Market Garden was the brainchild of Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. The plan was bold, perhaps too bold. 3 airborne divisions, the American 101st, the American 82nd, and the British 1st, would drop across Holland, each seizing key bridges. Then the British XXX Corps, a massive armored column, would punch up a single narrow highway through their positions, cross the Rhine and invade Germany. If it worked, the war might be over by the end of the year. But if any one bridge failed to fall, the entire operation would collapse. And at Nijmegen, that collapse nearly began. In the early days of the operation, the 82nd Airborne achieved most of its objectives. Colonel Reuben Tucker's 504th captured the Grave Bridge with textbook precision, attacking from both ends at once. Colonel William Ekman's 505th secured the Groesbeek Heights, vital high ground overlooking the battlefield. But Colonel Roy Lindquist's 508th failed to move quickly enough toward Nijmegen itself. That hesitation, a few critical hours, gave the Germans time to reinforce. Soon, battle-hardened SS troops from the 10th Panzer Division Frundsberg arrived, forming desperate defensive lines around the town's 2 great bridges: the railroad span called the Spoorbrug and the road bridge known as the Walbrug. They dug in, prepared for demolition, and waited. By September 19th, the lead tanks of XXX Corps had finally reached Nijmegen, exhausted from fighting up the narrow Hell's Highway that served as their only route north. British General Brian Horrocks met with Gavin and Van der Voort to plan the next move. They had no choice. The 82nd and the Guards' Armored Division would attack Nijmegen together. 2 task forces formed, one for each bridge. Van der Voort's paratroopers linked up with British tankers and prepared to assault through the heart of the city. At 1:45 p.m., Artstuik Chitwanantore Foyt, They began to move. Dutch civilians lined the streets, cheering and waving flags. After 4 years of occupation, liberation had finally come. Paratroopers smiled, waved, and then, just as suddenly, the cheering stopped. The civilians vanished into their homes. The quiet deepened. The men knew what that meant. Moments later, the first German shells screamed down. Tanks were hit. Machine guns chattered from hidden windows. The streets erupted in chaos. Company E and F of van der Voort's battalion charged forward, moving through shattered houses, breaking through interior walls, crawling across rooftops. Every window hid danger. Every corner could be death. The British Shermans fired into the buildings ahead, their cannons blasting holes through stone and brick. The ground shook beneath them. Still, the Germans held. Camouflaged 88 medium guns covered every intersection, their shots tearing through tanks and walls alike. Van der Voort's men fought on foot, shoulder to shoulder with the British Guards. They moved in perfect rhythm, paratroopers clearing buildings, tanks blasting openings, both covering the other with machine gun fire. It was close, brutal fighting, too close for tactics, too fierce for fear. As night fell, they had advanced nearly to the bridge, but not far enough. The day ended in stalemate. That night, as the exhausted paratroopers dug in, Gavin made a new plan. If they couldn't take the bridges from the south, they would take them from the north. The idea was madness. A daylight river crossing under direct enemy fire. But it was the only way. Major Julian Cook's 3rd Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry, was chosen for the assault. They would cross the 400-yard-wide Wall River in small canvas boats, seize the far bank, and storm the northern ends of the bridges, while British and American artillery rained fire and smoke to cover them. Cook knew what he was asking his men to do. Many wouldn't make it. By the afternoon of September 20th, the boats, collapsible Goatley boats made of wood and canvas, finally arrived. Only 26 were usable. There weren't even enough oars. Some men would have to paddle with rifle butts. The artillery barrage thundered to life, shaking the ground. The air filled with the shriek of shells and the roar of British tanks firing smoke rounds. Then, at 3 p.m., the whistle blew. Move out! Hundreds of paratroopers rushed the riverbank, dragging the boats into the water. And the Germans opened fire. Machine guns, 20mm flak cannons, mortars. The air itself seemed to scream. The river exploded around them, fountains of water and shrapnel. Boats shattered. Men vanished beneath the waves. Those who survived kept rowing, their faces streaked with smoke and blood. From the southern bank, British and American commanders watched in horror. But the boats kept going. They rowed through hell itself and reached the far side. Barely 125 men made it across alive, but they wasted no time. They charged the dike, furious, relentless, unstoppable. They threw grenades, stormed trenches, and overran the German positions with sheer determination. Within half an hour, the north bank was theirs. On the dike road above, Major Cook rallied his scattered paratroopers. They were outnumbered, low on ammunition, but burning with fury. They had seen friends drown, boats burn, bodies torn apart, and now they were taking it back, inch by inch. Captain Moffat Burris led his men toward the rail bridge, clearing houses and bunkers. Lieutenant James McGillis charged the old fortress called Hof van Holland, silencing the flak guns that had slaughtered his comrades during the crossing. By evening, the rail bridge, the Spoorbrug, was in American hands. As they looked across to the massive road bridge, the Wallbrug, they saw the final German defenses crumbling. On the southern side, van der Voort's paratroopers and the British Grenadier Guards launched their final assault. Shermans charged up the bridge ramp, guns blazing. An 88mm shell struck the lead tank, but the others pressed on. German Panzerfausts fired from the bridge girders. British gunners shot them down where they hid. One tank smashed through a concrete roadblock, its gun thundering. Then, through the smoke, they saw them, American paratroopers on the far side. The two forces linked up in the center of the bridge, under fire but victorious. Nijmegen's bridges, the road and the rail, were finally in Allied hands. In the chaos, German engineers tried to blow the Walbrug. General Heinz Harmel of the 10th SS Panzer watched from his bunker, pressing the demolition switch. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Some say Dutch resistance fighters had cut the wires before the attack, sacrificing their lives to save the bridge. Whatever the reason, the Walbrug stood firm, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Hundreds of paratroopers and guardsmen were killed or wounded. Bodies floated down the wall as the smoke drifted over the burning city. The road to Arnhem now lay open. But time had run out. The British 1st Airborne Division, trapped for days across the Rhine, had already been overrun. Arnhem would forever be remembered as a bridge too far. Still, the men of the 82nd Airborne and the British Guards had achieved the impossible. They had captured the Nijmegen bridges against tanks, artillery, and the river itself. They fought not for glory, but for each other, and for a hope that the war could finally end. In the years since, the story of Nijmegen has often been overshadowed by the tragedy at Arnhem. But to those who were there, it remains a testament to the raw courage of ordinary men facing impossible odds. Lieutenant Colonel van der Voort would later reflect, "It was chaos, confusing, frightening, but my men, they never stopped moving forward." And Major Julian Cook, who led the river crossing, summed it up best when he said, "They asked for men to cross that river, and the 82nd Airborne said yes." The bridges at Nijmegen still stand today, silent, steel monuments to courage, sacrifice, and the price of freedom.